record to discuss. Okay, so we'll be looking at bash scripting. But before we get there, we'll look at other things, right? So let's first of all, I think my machine is still coming up. Still coming up, still coming up. Let me see. This is already up. Okay. Just a while. While we wait for the other guy to come up, let's play around with this. Right, so I actually want to run two machines for us to see, and so that we can, play around the two devices. And then, like I told us, the first thing we'll be looking at is bash scripting. So before we script, let's look at other things, then move down to scripting. Now, like we have told us before, I believe we all know the command ping, right? Please, maybe you can unmute your mic and talk back so that
Yes,
I understand.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So ping is always used to, to create a handshake, right? A three-way handshake between a particular system and another system. So if I say ping google.com now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to check if Google is actually on. That's to say, if Google, the website google.com is actually alive, it's actually up, right? So if the Google server is down and somebody cannot access Google, and I do this ping google.com, it means I cannot be able, if Google server is down, it means I'll not be able to get this information, right? Now, this information, you see 64 bytes, right? 64 bytes means this is an amount of data that I'm getting from the Google website or from this website, right? And I told you before now that when you ping any web address, it will also resolve the IP address for you, right? So this is a networking, command that we always use. And ping is very important because those early days in computing, this is what we use most times to carry out denial of service attacks, right? Because we do something like what we call the ping of death. I believe we have all heard of it, ping of death. If you have 10,000 persons coming to shake your hand at a time, definitely you might not be able to take all of the hands, right? So that's what ping of death means. When we decide to establish this ping on Google using many systems, right? We can actually cause a denial of service because it will actually ping that system to death. So ping of death is a technique we use most times to carry out attacks, right? So those ping of death have even grown to something we call like slow worries. I don't know if you have heard of that attack also. Slow worries attack, right? We also use that. It's also a type of ping or a type of denial of service attack, right? So if, for instance, we have 10,000 computer systems trying to ping Google, this google.com, just like I'm saying, you see that this my ping is picking 64 bytes from Google. It's communicating between my system and Google's server, right? And it's taking 64 bytes. So imagine we have 10,000 computers taking 64 bytes. You definitely know that that will be a huge amount of data, right? And let's say we have 1 million computers doing that. So that is how, now of course. So we have done a ping, and like I've told us, this is the most important information here, or this is one of the important information here, the 64 byte, because it's showing that we have actually collected an information from google.com that we have pinged. If there was no 64 byte, it means nothing, or 0 byte, it means the ping did not work, right? The second important thing here is the IP address, right? So in this whole information you are seeing, most times the two important information are the amount of bytes and the IP addresses. So those are the two things that are very important when you ping a website, right? Or a web device. So I will try to see if I can ping the two computers that I have here. Let me see the IP address of this. So like we all know, I told us before now that ifconfig is a networking command you use to check for your IP, to know the IP that your system is sitting on. And you can see this is the IP that my system is sitting on, right? So let's look at this. I'm trying to load my okay. Please let me do this so that I can just get these guys running. So what I want to do is to ping through my network to check or to have multiple operating systems running so that I will know the IP addresses of all the systems. Then I want to ping through and sweep all through my network, right? So for instance, if we do net discover, I told us the other day that net discover is a command that you use to discover all the IP addresses that are within your network, right? All the IP addresses that are within your network, and you need to run that as an admin. So to run as an admin, you add sudo in front of the command. So sudo in front of the command stands for superior user, do a particular thing, right? So that's what sudo stands for. So let's compare 165. I have an IP address 165 here. Let me know who the owner is, right? Remember, this is ipconfig. So if you look at this, you notice that we have picked, my net discover has discovered an IP address here, 165, right? And this is the MAC address, right? And I also have, while on my system, I am running on 116. So you can see that, okay, aside my IP address that is 116, there's another IP address within this network that is sitting on the same network with me that is 165, right? I believe you're understanding what I am saying. So Net Discover is a tool that you use in discovering the networks or the computer system that are on the same network with you. So for instance, if you are connected to maybe a Wi-Fi now, or you are connected to your office network, right? So most times you want to know the people that are sitting on the same network with you, or the computers are on the same network with you. What you do is to use Net Discover to discover all the networks that are open. So it will actually list out all the networks together with the MAC address of the computer system, right? Now, this is Intel Corporate. So this should be my you know, my Windows PC, right? Let's see. Let me config. So 239, you can see, this is 239. I don't know if you guys can see this screen. Can you see my Windows screen? Somebody should talk to me. Can you see my Windows screen?
Yes, sir.
No, sir, I can't see it.
Okay. So can you see this this command prompt I just brought out now? Can you see it?
No, sir, we can't see it.
No, sir.
It's still showing you a virtual machine, sir.
We can't see it.
Okay, let me.
I see it.
Okay. So you can see this is my Windows machine. I guess we can all see it. This is my Windows machine, and this is the IP address on my Windows machine, 239. Right? You know, they are all on the same network. 192.168.85, right? They are all on the same network. If you look here, you see 192.168.85, right? So, but the last IP address, which is the host IP address 239, you notice that that is my Windows computer. That is the IP address of my Windows computer. So my NetDiscover is discovering all the IP addresses that, you know, are connected to this network that I am sitting on. Take note, this system I am sitting on, the IP address is 116. So they are all actually on the same network. I believe we all understand what I mean by all of these IP addresses are on the same network. Do we understand that?
Yes, I understand.
Okay. They are all on the same network, and the network ID here is 192.168.8, right? That is the network ID. So the host ID is like this system I'm sitting on now is 116, right? So it's my NetDiscover has told me that there's another IP that is 239 and also another IP that is 165, right? So all of this, but you can see that it resolved the MAC address of this, where it couldn't give you the vendor. But for this other machine, it has given you the vendor and other information about that IP address, right? I would have loved that the other machine also come on so that we use several machines to do this.
Almajiri ne.
Ya aka yi.
Ina waje ba ya zo.
To an yi ma sun yi zance ne.
So I'm starting up another machine so that we see how the NetDiscover is going to pick all of them out. Okay, that's good. So I'm running Ubuntu and I'm running this machine. So I'm running two machines together with my Windows machine, right? So that we pick all of this IP address, then want to do a script, right? That will be running all of these things for us. Because if you look at them, definitely it will be too bogus. But before we proceed, let's first of all ping one of these IP addresses, 192.168.85, right? .239. Now, this is my Windows machine. It means we can easily communicate with my Windows machine because it is giving us 64 bytes, right? 64 bytes. And you can see that it is giving us this information continuously, right? So if it is giving you this information continuously and you want to stop it, normally you press Ctrl Z, right? It will stop. But for us to just have only one count of this pinging, just to have one line, you add a switch or an option. We call option a -C option. That C stands for count. So you notice that instead of continuously giving us these scans that we have here, it will just scan it one time and give us result, right? I believe we are understanding this. So because we added a count to C, we just counted once. So if we say count like 4, or let's say 2, notice that it will give us 2 counts, right? You can see 2 counts, right? So most times, if this is helpful, if you have many IP addresses that you want to, scan, right? If you have many IP addresses that you want to scan, so this is helpful in that situation, right? So even if you want to scan and pick only the IP address that has 64 bytes, you can also do that, right? And that is one of the reasons, those are one of the things we'll be using when we are doing our scripts, right? So I use clear to clear it, right? So let me do net discover again and see. With this machine up now, we should be able to discover this machine. So let's do this. This machine is up. So let's look at the IP address of this machine. So we do our if config. Okay, still coming up, still coming up. Does not assign an IP address to this guy yet. So let's look at our net discover. It's picking 165, and then it will pick 239 also. Let me see this machine and the network of this machine. It's taking time. It will assign an IP address to it. So let's just wait for that to happen. So we have 2 machines. To get the IP address, or we can still do that on the IP address of this machine. Let's say this machine is our target machine. Now this is my Windows machine, right? So if it becomes our target machine, it means all our practicals I'll be carrying, we'll be doing it on this machine, so that we don't go and do on other machines that might cause problem for us, right? So we're doing that on that machine. Even if we want to ping, we ping that machine, right? So let's go ahead and then carry out some practice on that. Even the what's it called, the Linux machine, you can notice that it has picked it here also. You can see the 10.0.2.15 of the Linux machine, the Kali Linux we just started, right? So we can also view that here. But I wanted it to assign it an IP address that we can, just like others. So you can see the 10.0.2.15, which is a class A IP address, right? You can see that our net discover has discovered that. So for those of us that wants to, if most times you are connected to any network and you want to check to know all the people that are connected to your network, you can use the Net Discover to do that. Now with this, you can carry out any activity you want to carry out on the target machine, right? You can carry out any activity. You can run your Nmap on this. You can do whatever you want to do, right? On this. So this is how you get to know IP addresses that are sitting on the same network with you. Another way is what we call a ping sweeper, which is what we are going to design today. We are going to develop one ping sweeper as a tool. So if you are sitting on any network, what you just need to do is to run that ping sweeper so that it sweeps through the network and then fetch IP addresses for you, right? So before we get there, we have to look at a little bash scripting, right? Now, like we have established or we have told you before, bash scripting is a scripting language that, was like the basic scripting language that all Linux-based OS have as a grassroots or as a root of programming, right? So, and for you to start bash, the extension has to be a .bash, right? sh. That's the extension. So when you are downloading any file, you see .sh, you know that that's a bash script. And like we told us, if you want to run a program or a software, you always must have this before the name of that software. So these are the things we need to take note of. Then also, to run a bash script, you need to, have the commands, a bash scripting command, right? So we have bin, #bin as the bash scripting command, #bin. Let me write that. #bin, right? So these are the major commands you need to know when you want to run a bash script. So you have something like this to start your bash script. You have something like this, #bin. Okay, hashtag. Then you have the apostrophe. Then we have the bin /bash. So anytime you see any code that starts with something like this, you know that it's a bash script. This is just like the opening syntax of every bash script, right? So you can do #this and that, and then you put it in a folder, right? Just like we did echo the other day, and we put it inside a folder, right? So we'll go ahead and look at some of those things. So let's navigate to our desktop, CD desktop, right? And you do ls. Only there's a folder we created there before, and it's Peter, right? So you can do this to get into Peter. So the file is empty, right? Let me clear what we have done. So what we want to do now, first of all, like we did the other time, we echo something into a file, right? So today what we'll do is to echo ping. If you remember the other day, we echo ifconfig, right? Into a file. Now, for you to use into, you have to use one sign of the greater than sign, right? So we do ifconfig into, let's say the name of the file is test.txt. Since it's a text file, we are creating a file, right? If you do this, you will have something like this. If you now do your ls, you will see that text.txt that we have created, right? And then you can go ahead and say, okay, you want to see the content of text.txt. You do cat text.txt. Remember, the text is this. So this is what we have there. Since it is not a program, it is not going to run, right? You just see only the command as a text that you have inside there, right? Okay, so let's change this to be, let's change this command now to be a file that can be run or that can be run, right? So let's do the same thing, but use the .sh now, right? So it will still create that file with .sh extension. You can see we have two files there now, right? But if we have these two files, the .sh is a program. And remember, if you look at the file, right? The permissions of the file, it means you only have read and write permission, not execution permission. So even if it is a program, you cannot execute it, except you change the mode, right? So even if you change the mode of these two files, you will notice that even the text.txt, since it's a text file, it cannot run, right? But this other guy will run because it's actually a program. So let's go ahead and change the mode of those files. So you can do change mode, like I told you, you can use numbers, right? Or you can still do something like this, +S, right? On it. So the +X, it means you want to add an X to all what is here, right? You want to add an X to it. So if you want to add an X to it, if I ask somebody now, what is the number that we can use to add that X? Can anybody answer us? If you want X to be in all of these guys, right? So it means 001, 001, 001, right? So which number to base 8 can we use? So if we use 111, right? It will add S to all of those guys because 001 is 1. So 001 for the first guys, arrow WX, 001 for the second guys, and then 001 for the third guys. It's the same thing that we have here. So if I do change mode +X, right, then I name the file, it means if you change it to base 8, it will be 111, right? So we can do this +S on test test.sh, right? So if you do the long listing again of that file, you'll notice that there is X added here, right? And there's X added here, and there's X also added here, right? So you can see the file also have changed its format to tell you that it is a file that can be run, right? Or that is executable. Because the same thing, if we do, let's use the other format now on the .txt guy. So let's use 111 instead of using +X. Now I told you, you are using number, you can use 111, right? So if we do that, we can also have that if you do the long listing. So you can see X have been added. X were added, but other permissions were taken out. So it means our calculation was wrong. X to be added to all of them, but we are not supposed to take out the other permissions of others. So it means we are supposed to use 001 is, this is 111, this is 7, 111, this is 7, 101. So 101 is what? 101 is 4. Is it 4? 101, 011. 101 should be 5, right? Let's look that up. Let's look that up. Let's look that up. Base 8. I don't know why this is taking, we are looking for 101. 101 is 5, right? So 101 is 5. So we'll do 775 should give us the same thing as what we have here, right? So let's do 775. 775 for text.txt. So if we do our long listing again, so you notice that we have the same 775, right? Just like we have the plus X. So invariably plus X, if you're using your change mode and using plus X, is the same as 775, right? I know with time, we'll get to know all of these things, but just understand that this is how permission works. If you are good with the numbers, you make use of them. If you are good with the, the alphabets, you make use of them, right? But we can see that definitely these are now the same. They are both executable, but the text.txt will not run. Let me clear my screen. It will not run because it is not a runnable file. For instance, let's go ahead and run the both of them. If we say this, let's run test.txt. You see bash, no such file or directory, right? Because it's not, okay, we didn't write the name correct. Let's get it correct. Okay, it ran because we are running it as an executable file. So it's running, right? So same thing with our test.sh, right? So it will run because we have added it and made it to be an executable file, right? So, but most times when you see the .sh, you know that it is a bash script, right? It is a bash script. So let's go ahead and then clean or do some more magic to our code. So we want our code to have, because actually the if command itself, it is actually a command. So we just pushed it into a file. So why not we create our own file that will do a particular command? That is what we are going to achieve at the end of today's class, right? So if we say, okay, let's open our command, let's open one of these files. Let's say we use this. I don't know if this is supported, leafpad test.sh. So if leafpad is supported, leafpad is like an editor, just like our nano. So it's not here. So let's go ahead and see if we can install it. Sudo snap install leafpad. We can still use nano to do what we want to do, but let's see if it's installed. Then we can use that. I think it's more friendly to use leafpad, right? If it's not coming, we go ahead and use nano or we use Vim. There are so many editors that can be used actually. So it's downloading that and it will be installing that for us. Okay. While that is installing, let me go ahead and open another window. Okay, so let's navigate to our desktop and then to Peter. Oh, CD into Peter. I want to go into desktop. And CD. So LS. So we want to work on one of these files. So let's open the nano test.sh. So you can see the former command that we wrote is there, the if config. Why it ran in the .tsc is because this is actually a command of its own, and the code has already been there, right? So that is why it ran. So let's write our own code. Let's do a ping, for instance. Let's ping who? 192. Okay, let's ping 182, right? Let's ping 239 rather. So we can say ping 192.168.85.239. So let's say we are doing this. So I'll Control X to save, and then Control X rather, to leave. So if we go ahead and run that code, test.sh, you see it starts pinging, right? And it continues pinging, right? So now, normally with this file, you can go home with the file test.sh, and anytime you sit in a system, you can just run that ping, right? And it will continue pinging the file. So let's go to that file and make some more changes, because you can see the ping was going continuously. So we want to, open the file and say, okay, when you ping this, please ping it to the count of 1. It should only be, just one item. You should count only 1. We don't want too much wahala, right? So we can do that and save. So if you come again and run that file, you notice that you have just this, right? Instead of pinging continuously, you can see that it just pinged with 1 count only. This is the 1 count. And like I told us, most time in pinging, the IP address and the bytes, right? Any line that carries the IP address and the bytes like this is the most important line. It's the line that establishes whether there's a connection or not, right? So we can still do it in a way that all of these things that we don't need will just fall off. We only need an IP address, right? We only need an IP address. So what we want to achieve is a ping that will just fetch our IP addresses for us. Because if we have, a website that the IP address is not resolved, definitely if we run a ping, it's going to do that for us, right? So we can just say, okay, let's truncate or let's remove all of these other informations that are not important to us, right? Let's remove all of them and then have only the place that have our IP address. So for us to do that, we can use several other commands, right? We can use several other commands. For instance, if we go ahead and open this, our command, we are trying to build a process here. So just follow us. So we can, add another command. Now we have gotten that result. We'll use a command. If you look at that, our cheat sheet I gave to us the other day, there's one command like this, right? We call it piping. So you are piping the result you can get from this ping, this. This is a full result like what we saw before. So you want to put it in a pipe so that you can pick out some things. And the things you want to pick out is the line that have that 64 bytes, because that's a line that is showing you that, yes, there's an information here. So you want to grab that line. So for you to grab that line, you use a term we call grep, right? To grab that line. That line is 64 bytes. Right? So if you close this, where is it? Close this. Right? So let's save and run. So you notice that we have successfully removed all these other informations that are here, other information rather that are here, right? So we have just been able to grab only this line that have the 64 bytes, because what we are interested in is this line. The 64 byte tells us that this guy is on because he's sending me data, right? And then the IP address is who we are keenly interested in. We want to, the guy we want to actually grab, right? So most times, if you want to run ping, for instance, now you know the IP address that we are using. But what if you don't know the IP address? What do you do, right? If you don't know the IP address and you want to have something that will be picking this IP address, just like we have seen this guy picking all the IP addresses out. So we want to do something like that, that will pick all these addresses or IP addresses for us, right? And not to limit it to just this guy. Now, also note that for you to have this complete IP address or this network ID from 192.168.85, for you to have this network ID, it means the network router is on, right? The network router is on and people are connected to it. That is why you can see it on. Otherwise, it will not be on. So this network ID is live. So most times your ping sweep or like the net discover, what it's doing is it's going through the entire router and then picking all the IP addresses that have been assigned to different devices. So that is what the ping sweep or this net discover is actually doing, right? And just as we are doing as, that is how we'll be able to, get to a point whereby we can also grab only the IP addresses. Like I used the -C earlier, that -C, and I put 1. If you want to learn more about ping, you can just man ping, and you can see that the -C is also an option, just like what we discussed the last time, right? So it is an option that you can use, to count the number of results to get, right? So for us to do all of this now, we need to put this as a program, because if we start running it, we might not be able to truncate or get our results the way we want them, right? So we have to start putting them in a command so that it will be a proper command. But before we go there, we want to remove all of this information. We don't need them. This ICMP, whatever, we don't. In fact, as a matter of fact, it is just this IP address that we are interested in, right? We want to remove all of this. We want to remove all of this information. So let's use another command. We'll now open Nano, and then we will pipe that result again into another command. So for us to do that, we pipe, right? You can pipe it and say, okay, cut. Cut now is another command in Linux that you use to truncate. Those of us that have gone through the cheat sheet we gave us, definitely you will see cut and how you can use cut. So what we are doing with cut is to remove all the strings, right? Or let's say all the spaces. So if you want to remove all the spaces, you use you put them in a string. You see, just like we put 64 bytes in a string, that double quotes, right? So you want to remove all the spaces. So you put it in that double quotes. You can see after the quotes or in between the quotes, there's a space in between. So I want to remove the spaces that are there. And if you look at our initial command, or when we run it back, you notice that there are 4 places that spaces occur. So there are 4 fields actually that those spaces occur. So we use a -F to represent those fields. You can man all of these things. If you man cut, you will see all of the parameters there also, right? So we want to use this. Let's save this and run it, and you see what I'm talking about. Okay, cut. No such directory as cut. Let's see that. Let's see that again. So what we are trying to do is to remove all of these spaces. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is one space, right? This is one space. This is another space, right? Then this is another space, and this is another space. So the ones close to the IP address, because we are trying to grab the IP address itself, the ones close to it, we are not touching them. So we are cutting out this 4 space. This is 1, this is 1 space, this is 2 space, this is 3, sorry, this is the 3rd space, and this is the 4th space. So those are the things we want to cut out. So let's look at cuts again. What happened to our code? So we cut the delimiter. Okay, we didn't add the delimiter in the cut. So maybe I'll just man this cut so that you see. So cut, want to cut spaces, the delimiter of the delimiters, right, that are accompanying that line of statements, right, and 4 fields, which are empty spaces. So let's save and then go ahead and cut that. So you notice that we have fetched only the IP address out, right? So let's see, if you man, so that's the manual of cut. So you can also read to understand cut. You can see delimiter, -D stands for delimiter. So use delim instead of tab, right, for fields delimiter, right? So all those fields that are there are the things we use delimiter for, right? So any field in between the space or any field, any space, for instance, in between field, any space in between field are what we use delimiter to remove. Then the fields itself, select only these fields, right? Only the fields, only 4 fields are the things we selected when we were cutting. Also print any line that contains no delimiter, right? No delimiter character, unless the -S option is specified. So you can spend more time and read on cut so that you know what cut. Say remove section from each line of bytes. So if you want to learn more, you can play around with cuts and then learn more with cuts, right? So that is that. So we have man cut and we have looked at it. So we have been able to tie our IP address or pick only the IP address from that thing. So it's just like you saying you want to ping that guy, right? And then it is picking only, or you are interested in only the IP address. For instance, you don't know the actual IP address now, right? So, but as we progress, we'll see how important this thing is. So let's also see how we can remove the 2 columns behind the IP address. So we can still use cut to do that. But now you know that it is 1 field we are cutting, unlike the other time that we removed 4 fields. So we can go ahead and then cut, right? So let's go ahead and run that. Nano this. So we want to remove those dots or that dot. So we'll still pipe this our results. Remember, piping is like you putting your result into a pipe, right? So we'll still pipe this our results into cuts. Now we are cutting just one item, right? Cut, we use the delimiter and we specify the item we want to cut, right? This is the item we want to cut. Then how many number of field is the item? It's just one, right? So we can go ahead and save and then exit. So if we run that code, it should be able to give us only the IP address. You can see it is giving us only the IP address. Now, where is this important to apply? I'm sitting in a network and I don't know the people that are sitting down there, and I have a ping sweeper. So what I can do is to know that always an IP address have, especially a class C IP address, have 256 host IP, or can be distributed to 254 hosts rather. Because just like a router, you see this is a network, right? We told us initially that this is the network ID and this is the host ID. But the fact that this host ID have host number 239, it means there's host number 1, host number 2, host number 3, host number 4, until host number 254, right? There's also host number 0, and there's host number 255, but we are not considering those two because one is the actual router's IP address that is using to communicate with these guys, while the other one is the broadcast IP address that the router is using to communicate with all the IP addresses it has given out. So the .0 and .255, we are not considering them. But from .1 to .254, you are considering them. So most times when you want to write or you want to sweep all through the network, you have to sweep through all the numbers, except this network ID that is constant or that is the same in all of them. The rest can change, right? So if, for instance, I don't know this IP address and I want to, scan through the network, I can open my file and decide to say, okay, let me come to this point and remove this IP address. So if I remove this IP address, what am I going to have there? Because I want to scan the network. So what I will have there is a container, something like a variable, that I will have to put all of those numbers from 1 to 254 inside that container. So let me have a variable, I call the variable R, for instance, right? Then I will put all of the numbers from 1 to 255 into that variable. Now, this is to say that if you go to a network and you sit on the network and you check your IP address using IP configure, and you discover the network ID, right? You can definitely, run or just change the network ID on your ping sweeper and then run it, right? So this, what we just did here now is to create a variable. So the moment a variable comes in, it means we have to write it as a code. It has to become a program. Otherwise, we will not be able to, give it, make use of the variable, right? So let's do that. Let's go ahead and write it as a program. I remember I told us that if we must do, if it is a bash script we want to write, we have to do something like this, right? Bin slash bash, right? That's just to tell us that, okay, this guy wants to write a bash script, right? This guy wants to write a bash script. So what will our script be like? We are trying to push something into that variable arrow that we created. So we'll use something like a loop. We will not use an if statement because you are saying if statement is kind of limited because it is either it is positive or negative in our if statement. So it is either you say, okay, if you are doing something like between 0 and 1, you can say, okay, if it is 0, print this. If otherwise or else, give us this, right? So we'll be using a for statement because a for statement, what we want to do is, first of all, go and ping, check through .1. Is it on? No. Or you go to .2. Is it on? No. Go to .3. Is it on? Yes, pick it out. Go to .4. So until you get to .255. So that is what we want to do now. So we want to say, okay, for any time that our arrow, remember we have declared a variable named arrow in, right? Anytime that our arrow in, the sequence is what? The sequence is 1 to 255. Okay, let's do this in what is that code again? Okay, let's do it this way then. Let's do in variable sequence of 1 to 254. Right? It should do our ping for us. Right? It should do our ping for us. And at the end, it should tell us that it is done. So let's do this and see. I just believe I got it correctly. Okay, so let's save and let's exit. And then let's run our code. So what we just tried to do is to create a ping sweeper, right? So let's watch it and see. If it runs, then fine. But I think there's another way we can still do that, right? But let's see if that statement is correct. It's not giving us results. Okay, let's use the other way then. Let me stop that. Let's use this. Save for arrow in. Let's use this instead of this. Let's do a curly brace of 1 to 254. Right? So if we do this from 1 to 254, do a ping for us. Okay, let's put these guys in bracket. Ping this. And done. Okay. I think it's working, but it's not giving us what we want. It's giving us results on every IP address that it is pinging. And this is not what we want. Connect, network is unreachable. So it's giving us reply from all the networks. Okay, see the one that is reachable now. It has picked out one. Right? Okay, it has picked, okay, pick 2 that they are reachable in that network. But this is not what we want to achieve. We want it to pick only the ones that are reachable. right? Only the ones that are reachable are the ones we want. So let's see, let's modify our commands again. Let me clear this. So ping this, grep this. We are pinging this IP address, counting to 1, cutting this, cutting this, cutting this. And then, so let's do that and see. So we don't want it to give us result of, yes, okay, this is what we want, right? So you can see that it has picked the IP addresses of the systems that are on, and it has given them to us, right? So these are the systems that are on, 192.168.1.this, and this 165, and then 239. So those are the systems that are on. I think it's still running, it's still running. So let's wait for it to finish. But we have been able to successfully build this, a ping sweep, right? If you take this command, or if you take this script now to an organization and run it, what it will do is to pick all of the IP addresses that organization for you. That is just what this guy will do for you. So if you want to hit or shoot a particular attack on these IP addresses, you can just go ahead and then shoot them, right? We can also do this. You can say run this file. Okay, let me stop the program because it's still running. So we can say run this file and put the result into this file. Dot what? st. I just say run, but don't display the result again. Just put it into a file named text.txt for us. So we'll now have a file named text or text.txt. So it means if you go to an organization and run this, you can run it and save it inside a file, right? And you just copy your file and you move away. You see, it has run that command, but it did not give us any result. So when we do this, we'll see our text.txt is created. If you go ahead and cut your text.txt now, you will see the content, right? So you can see the content of the file. So what we just did was we created a ping sweeper, then told the ping sweeper to run the command and save it in a file for us. So most times, these are the things you see when somebody just comes connect to your system. It can just do this, to get the IP addresses that are, on your system. And at times, they might actually have already, carried out or the commands they will be using, just like we created this one, might be maybe a more sophisticated one, right? They'll just come and hit it on your system. And that is all for your organization. So we can still say, okay, want to run nmap on that file. Nmap, okay, let's do nmap. Let's do nmap, right? Okay, sudo app install nmap. We don't have nmap here. So we want to install nmap. That's going to take us a little time. We don't have nmap on this machine, but we have nmap on the other machine. That's going to take us a little time. So we can go ahead, run nmap on that file, right? Okay, I guess we have leafpad now installed. We have leafpad. I think the installation is still going on for our leafpad. So we are installing nmap. We want to fire nmap on those 3 IP address and then see this thing. Okay, leafpad has opened. So most times we install leafpad, or it's easier for us to use because it has, a white screen, and it's like, our normal, what's it called? Word document that you can do whatever you want to do. You can type, save, print, and all those things, preview, right? So you might want to be using leafpad as your editor, right? So let's run nmap on that file. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. We're supposed to add a dash. So this is nmap. I want to look for one of the switches that we'll add. Input from list of hosts. So we have to add the IL, dash IL, right? The dash IL is what we will add. So let's do that. So we are hitting nmap on that file now. So you can see what it did here was, okay, it scanned how many? It scanned 116, right? Okay, and it's telling us that this is our virtual box. So 116 is our virtual box. And port 80 is open on the virtual box, right? It also scanned 165, and it's okay. It's saying that, okay, port 53 is open on 165. So we have been able to run that. Let's see why it didn't scan the third guy. It's only scanning these two. So it means it couldn't scan the third guy. Let's look at the third guy, 239. So let's do this. Let's do some more sophisticated scan. You remember we ran nmap on our Windows also. We can run nmap on our Windows also, just like we showed us the other day. So you can still copy out your file and go and run it on the nmap on your desktop, right? So what I want to do now is to get some of the switches that we can just use them and then run. So we have dash A and dash V. Let's do that for those 3 guys. Let's see intense. I have dash A, dash B, dash SU. Let's use dash T for also. So let's do it. Let's hit it on. They want us to do root privilege. I think we can get more information now about our target machine, right? So it's scanning, actually it's scanning that of the VirtualBox itself. So you can see the name of the VirtualBox, Peter VirtualBox, and then the IP address of that box. So the virtual machine is what have this IP address that you have seen. So we can use Nmap if you have gathered enough networks, right? You can use Nmap to do some more scanning, getting out some more information about the machine. Now, if we want to, let's say, play around this, just like we did for Google, right? Let's say we clear this. Let's ping google.com, right? And we have this IP address. So we can still play around to see how many IP address are there, right? We can still do this just like we did initially, right? So you can still ping 142.250.184, right? Then dot, you can decide to put your variable here now, right? Let's add a count C. So we can still write that command that we wrote initially using this, right? Then what it will just do for us is to sweep all through Google server and pick the IP addresses that are on for us. So as hackers, what will you now do is for you to go ahead and resolve those IP addresses to know what they are actually hosting, right? Although it is not proper to go into something like this, right? But just like what we did, you can actually do that here and sweep through the network. So it can be done maybe if an organization is taking you or has invited you for a pen testing or an ethical hacking, and you carry out, this type of something, you can just build your own ping sweep from the house, right? And then take it there and deploy it, right? So if let's say we have, we can just come here now. Where's our code? Let me stop this scan from running, right? I can come to our code. Where is it? Where is it? Okay, and then put something like, although this IP address is a class B IP address, right? So definitely you can do more. You can go further more with it. But note that this ping sweeper we have done is for only class C IP address, right? is for just class C IP address. So we can do something like this, right? And then save it, exit. So if we run this, even though we are doing what is wrong, but if you run it, I think you should have some results, right? So you can see what I'm saying. So it's fetching all the guys that are alive, all the IPs that are on that network for you. You understand? So this is what you do when you are actually on a live hack, right? So you can still push this into a file and then run your Nmap on that file. And then the Nmap will start telling you, all the information you need to know about that, about any of the targets, the one that are open, the one that are closed, and all whatnot, right? So this is how you run that, right? You can see it has gotten to 254. So even if you look at it, you notice that even in between, there are some that are on and there are some that are not on, right? 239, 240, 238, 228, 233. So some of them are alive, some are not alive. So even if you go, let's go from the beginning, you see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 3, 12, 5, 18, 20, 17. You can see some of them are on and some are not on. So those IP addresses that are on, you can just run your Nmap scan on them to actually understand what they can do. So we can see, let's say we create this or we push this into a file and say practice.txt, right? So run that, and you notice that that file will definitely come out with all of the IP addresses that are currently on that system, right? So it's still running and loading. So please, you can test this on networks that you have, privilege or rights and permissions to practice them on, please. So this is prac.txt. We can just say, okay, let's do our Nmap, right? So let's do that. This is prac.txt, right? So we can run Nmap on them. So it's scanning the first guy. So most times you want to do something like this, definitely you know that it is something that you can just plug in and then go and sleep and leave it, because it will definitely take time to get all of this done, right? It definitely takes time before the scanning is complete. But what I am doing, or what we are doing here, like I told us, is totally wrong. And definitely, if Google have a firewall, definitely it will prevent this. Not even if they have. Some of these will be prevented from scanning, actually, because it is not supposed to be done, right? So let's end these programs, right? But just understand that this is how you do it. If you open that file, you see that that file has all those IP addresses there, right? prac.txt. So you can see all of them there, right? So you can now fire. So if you are carrying out an attack, you have to fire and then see a port, an IP that is, a port that is open in any of the IP, and then what attack is susceptible to that port, right? Then you can now fire on that port. right? I believe we are understanding what I'm explaining here. So let's go back, let's run our nmap on the test.txt that we created. Let's see if we can get some results there from there. If they are open ports, we will see. If they are closed ports, we can't do anything on that. So let's see if we can get any open port. Then we launch an attack against it. Hopefully in our exhibition attack, we will install an operating system and then we'll fire it, hopefully by tomorrow or next. I think I have that installed. I have a Windows machine installed already. So we can just practice with this and then see how these things work, right? So this is going to take time, giving us that result, right? But let's just know that this is how it is done, and that is how you create a bash script. That's how you create a bash script. So we'll be stopping the class here for today. We hope to continue tomorrow with the class. If there's any question, please, you can go ahead and ask.